What's up everybody, we're doing more Malifaux lore. This week we're talking about Captain Zip from the Bayou and Outcasts factions. So spoiler alert for all of Zip's stories, and you can find a list of all the stories in the description below in case you want to check them out. Don't forget to give me a like and subscribe to the channel if you haven't already, so you can catch all my videos going forward. And with that, let's get into Zip. Zip is a gremlin from the Bayou who found an Aethervox and listened to the stories being broadcasted about people going on grand adventures. He was inspired by these stories and decided that it was his destiny to become an infamous pirate. He began by robbing caravans, but decided that petty theft was below him and he needed to step his game up. Zip and his band of sky pirates had just finished hijacking a stagecoach, and he watches as his men search through the loot. Zip explains that they didn't rob the stagecoach for the money or the loot, but that they did it to bolster their reputation as the infamous sky pirates. His second-in-command turns to him and asks if they can still keep the loot, as a Silurid leaps out of the bayou and begins eating the gremlin. He asks Zip for help, but Zip stops to scold him for not calling him Captain Zip, and as he explains the importance of the chain of command, the Silurid swallows the gremlin. Not wanting to lose face with his men, Zip explains that the second-in-command was not showing the proper attitude and that he admires the initiative that the Silurid has shown. He declares the Silurid his new first mate and then offers it some smoked pork when it tries to eat another of his men, an exchange which the Silurid finds agreeable. Zip begins explaining to his men that their mission today was a failure as they left no one behind, so there would be no one to spread the word of what they had done. One of the gremlins asks where he learned all these big words, and another of them explains that he didn't used to speak this way until he started listening to the Aethervox that humans used to speak to each other. Zip ignores them and goes on, but soon stops as he sees a large shape rising into the sky in the distance. He soon finds out that this is an airship that the guild is testing, and he decides that he's going to steal it. He spends several weeks scouting out the area it is launched from, learning the schedule, and observing the guard duties. When the right time comes, he sneaks into the facility late at night when most of the guards are sleeping, and sets fire to a pile of crates. He then makes his way to the roof of the building where his men wait, as the guild frantically try to put out the fire and start launching the airship to avoid it burning up with the rest of the facility. As it leaves the hangar doors, Zip and his men jump down in their gliders, landing on the undefended ship, and Zip tries to deliver a monologue to the nearby scientists and guards, but they are unable to hear him over all of the noise. The first mate then joins them by leaping onto the ship before it gains much altitude. Zip and his men search the ship, and he encounters only one person on board. He tells the man that he and the sky pirates are commandeering the ship, as one of his men approaches and asks Zip if he knows how to fly the ship. Zip is suddenly terrified as he realizes that he doesn't, and he turns back to the human, asks if he is the ship's mechanic. The man replies that he is the engineer, and confirms that he does know how to fly the ship. Zip turns back to his men and explains that just as he had planned, they have captured someone who will serve as the pilot for the ship until he learns how to do it himself. He tells the man to take the ship up, and watches intently as he manipulates the controls. He then introduces the man to the first mate, and explains that they will be left there together as Zip searches the rest of the ship. The first mate licks his lips, and looks at the man with great interest. Zip and his men search the cargo hold, and he finds a lightning gun, as well as a jetpack, both of which he keeps for himself. He then finds a small personal flying machine, and he and his men remark that it kind of looks like a giant skeeter. He brings the machine back to the human, and asks if he knows how to use it, and if he could make more like it, and the human says that he can. Zip then asks if it could be modified to look even more like a skeeter, and the man once again replies that he can. Zip asks what his name is, and he introduces himself as Earl Burns, and Zip, being very pleased with himself, tells Earl to take them to the bayou, and that going forward the ship will be known as the Infamy. Zip attends the annual Chug Mug Celebration, a gremlin holiday that involves drinking and, well, mostly just drinking. One of his sky pirates named Cleats is disgruntled since he was put on guard duty and was not going to be able to participate in the celebration. So he decides to steal the alcohol that is stockpiled for the celebration in order to have his own party. But in the process, he accidentally sets fire to the warehouse and it explodes. Brewmaster finds Cleats, knowing what he has done, and explains to the gremlin that he invented the Chug Mug Celebration as a way to bring the gremlins together and temporarily stop them from fighting with each other. Cleats starts to regret what he has done, but Brewmaster tells him that he has a few extra barrels of hooch that they can bring back to the celebration in order to save the day. Cleats happily helps him, and they return to the party, where Zip approaches and is about to scold Cleats, but Brewmaster raises his hand to silence Zip, and everyone is shocked that the captain actually stops talking. Brewmaster explains that Cleats has saved the Chug Mug Celebration, and they all get a taste of Brewmaster's latest brew. When Zip hears rumors that the guild is intending to move against the Gremlins, he correctly assumes that they must have a new leader. Soon after, he is summoned to a meeting of the other Gremlins, and upon his arrival, he begins explaining a complicated plan to fight back against the guild that will require the sacrifice of many Gremlins from the other families, before he is interrupted by Ma Tucket smacking him with her spoon. Sommer gets up in front of the group and begins discussing the problem with the guild, and as Zoraida tries to take her turn to speak, Sommer points out that this is a Gremlin problem, and she is not a Gremlin, and Zip suddenly realizes, as if for the first time, that that was the case. Zoraida leaves, and Sommer explains that the Gremlins need to choose a leader, a Gremlin general, and as soon as he suggests that he get the position, a fight breaks out, and all of the Gremlins in attendance begin brawling over who should be the leader, until the brewmaster quiets everyone, and they all settle down. They begin discussing the various ways they could choose a leader, and Zip speaks up, explaining that his engineer told him about the way the humans do it, using votes in a system called democracy. The other Gremlins discuss this idea, and eventually Sommer turns to the brewmaster and asks him what he thinks, and the brewmaster says that if they all agree to honor the result, that he thinks it's a good idea. Zip tries to remind them that this was his idea, as the rest of the Gremlins agree to meet back in a month for the vote. A month later, they regroup, and the brewmaster organizes a system for voting. It takes a full day to count the vote, and when the results are announced, it is revealed that there is a three-way tie between Ophelia, the brewmaster, and Lenny Jones. Everyone gets suspicious of each other, and Zip stands up and announces that the other Gremlins wouldn't know good leadership if it bit them in the face, and that he is rescinding his and his crew's votes, as he flies away, threatening his men that if they do not follow, they will be declared mutineers. Zip and the Sky Pirates are in the process of robbing a town outside of Malifaux City. As his men load the bounty onto the ship, Zip assembles the townspeople in order to make a speech to them. As he does so, a guild guard steps up to challenge him, and he shoots the man with his lightning gun, killing him immediately. He explains to the rest that their possessions are being taken, but that he will not harm any of them as long as they cooperate. He is about to explain to them the history of Captain Zip and the infamous Sky Pirates, so that they may pass his legend on to others, when one of his men approaches and tries to interject. Zip scolds him for interrupting, and tells him to go back to guard duty as he turns back to the crowd, but then the crewman blurts out that the infamy has been stolen. Zip turns to see his airship flying away in the distance, and takes off to go after it. As he and his men catch up with the airship, he stakes it out and then orders his men to board. He and a few of his iron skeeters burst in through the windows to find the assembled crew of roguish-looking men and women. He is surprised that they do not put up any resistance, and he demands to speak to their leader. Parker Barrows steps forward and identifies himself, and Zip is surprised, and he itemizes a list of crimes that Parker and the Barrows gang are responsible for. Parker remarks that he must have read his wanted poster, and Zip replies that he has, and that it's a most impressive list of accomplishments, second only to his own. Zip apologizes for getting off on the wrong foot, and offers Parker and his men a meal to make it up to them. Parker hesitates, but then laughs and agrees. The two crews get together, and Zip serves them Gremlin Moonshine, and they quickly get inebriated as they eat and have fun. Parker and Zip speak to each other, getting increasingly loose-lipped, and eventually Zip asks Parker if he ever had to back out of a heist that he regretted not completing. Parker mentions that last time he was this drunk, he planned to steal the hanging tree, as it serves as a symbol of the guild's tyranny, and many of his comrades have been hanged there. Parker soon passes out from the alcohol, and Zip decides to make his wish come true. He takes the infamy to Malifaux City, and he and the two assembled crews tether the infamy to the hanging tree, and begin pulling on it. Zip and some of the men fight off a small force of guild guards, and he is basking in the glory of his upcoming accomplishment as the hanging tree begins glowing. Zip sees a man descend from the infamy, and recognizes Parker, who has just stirred from his drunken slumber. Parker comes to a rough landing, injuring his ankle, but fights off a few guards and approaches Zip. Zip is about to greet him, but Parker cuts him off, and insists that they must leave immediately, pointing out the ghostly form of Jackdaw approaching them from down the street. Zip tries to protest, but upon seeing the figure he agrees, and points out that they'll need to untether the infamy in order to make their escape. Parker says that as Zip can fly, he should cut the ropes, while Parker covers him. Zip flies up to the tree and begins cutting some of the ropes, as he sees Jackdaw lasso one of the iron skeeters, causing it to crash and explode. He successfully looses all the ropes, and turns back to see that Jackdaw has now lassoed Parker's bad leg, and is pulling the man in. Zip rushes forward, and tries to cut the rope, but his knife passes through it like it's not even there. Thinking quickly, he turns around and fires his lightning gun at Jackdaw, causing the man to spasm, and the rope loosens a bit, and Parker is able to get free. Zip tethers Parker to his jetpack, and takes off for the infamy. After they make their escape, Parker is being patched up by the doctor, and Zip approaches and asks how he is, commenting that people will be talking about their stunt for a long time. Parker responds that it wasn't worth the lives that they lost, and Zip counters that next time they will be more prepared. Parker asks what next time he is speaking of, and Zip answers that it would be a shame to deny the natural camaraderie between their two crews, and even worse to miss the opportunity for fame and fortune. Parker agrees, and Zip offers to shake his hand, calling them partners, and Parker responds that he wouldn't go so far as to call them partners, but he would call them friends. So that's Zip in the books. I gotta say, Zip is one of the more interesting Gremlin characters in the story. It's pretty funny to me how he's very well-spoken and fancies himself to be very civilized and sophisticated, but he's surrounded by all these bumbling idiots. I also really enjoy that last story with him and Parker. I thought it was a cool way to introduce him into the Outcast faction, and I'm looking forward to seeing some more of the antics the two of them get up to. But anyway, drop me a comment and let me know who you want me to do a video on next. And if you're not already subscribed to the channel, please don't forget to do that, and drop me a like. It's good for the algorithm and it gets the video in front of more people. And thanks for watching.